Psalms 91, verse 1. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Most High Ahayah, He is my refuge and my fortress, my power, in Him will I trust. Shalom.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. My name is Rawchaa, and I have with me here Makaahla Anal, the Meek one, coming to you from the Gocc Jordan area. I'd like to say, my shalom ka'ak. I'm your Basada God. Shalom, everybody on the line. The name of today's lesson is The Secret Place According to the Most High and Not Man. We're going to start off by saying all praises, honor, and glory to Ahayah, Ahayah, Bahashem Yashaya, Wa Kadash. Let's say the SHAM real quick. I hope everyone has their heads covered, all women and all men have their heads uncovered. Salakia for that. Let's do the SHAM. And we're going to have Makaahla lead us off with that.
Father Ahayah, in the name of Yashaya, we ask that you send the Holy Spirit upon us. Shema Yasharala Ahayah Alahayah Nawa Ahayah Achai.
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 Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one. We're going to go into just a little bit about what's going on in the earth today, and we're going to really go in depth today on the secret place and the holy mountain, and give some scripts to back up what's going on in the earth today. So now we're going to go into the secret mountain, what it's about, where it's at, and the secret place. So what we're going to start off with, Sirach. Go to the book of Sirach, chapter 3. Anybody that has their apocryphas, it's in your apocrypha, not in the canonical books. We're in the book of Sirach. We're in the 3rd chapter. We're going to start at the 17th verse through the 19th verse. Go ahead, Ahch.
The wisdom of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 3, verse 17. My son, go on with thy business in meekness, so shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved.
Okay, so my son or my daughter, they use the masculine, but it means both. Go on with thy business in meekness, so shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved. We are to walk in meekness, not haughtiness, arroganceness, proudness. Those are all, the wrong ways to walk. The way to walk in this walk and be approved by our Heavenly Father is to walk in meekness. Go ahead, Ahch.
Verse 18. The greater thou art, the more humble thyself, and thou shalt find favor before the Most High Ahayah.
Okay, so the more humble, or the greater that you are, the more humble you should be. And that way, you will find favor with our Father, the Most High.
Verse 19. Many are in high place and of renown, but mysteries are revealed unto the meek.
Okay, so there's many in high positions and are men or women of renown. But the mysteries
Are revealed unto the meek.
there you go. The mysteries are revealed unto the meek. So anybody wondering why they're not getting revelations and this and that, humble yourself and you will receive revelations. Well, next book we're going to go into and see what desert that Moses went to receive the law. We're going to start off in Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. We're going to precept in Jasher. So we're going to go Exodus, Jasher, Exodus, Jasher. The book of Exodus, chapter 3, and hit verse 1. Then we're going to skip right over to Jasher 79. Go ahead, Ahch.
Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of Ahayah, even to Horeb.
Okay, so he came to the mountain of Ahayah, even Mount Horeb. He was staying with his father-in-law because he had fled Egypt for killing that Egyptian, because the Egyptian was punishing one of his Hebrew brothers. So he had to flee, and he fled to Midian. So remember these names and these areas. The backside of the desert of Midian, the mountain of Horeb, the mountain of the Most High. So we're in the book of Jasher, chapter 79, verse 1, precept.
The book of Jasher, chapter 79, verse 1. And in those days, Moses was feeding the flock of Reuel, the Midianite, his father-in-law, beyond the wilderness of Sin, and the stick which he took from his father-in-law was in his hand.
Okay, so we know the wilderness of Sin or the wilderness of Zin is the exact same place. We're just getting precepts so we can know exactly where these places are, so that there's no discrepancy where the holy mountain is, because that's another deception we've mentioned in last week's lesson. You know, I suggest that you go and check out the last 2 lessons on Get Out, because this is all connected as a 3-part series. Keep that place in Jasher. We're coming back. We're back in Exodus chapter 3, and we're hitting the 2nd through the 4th verse. Go ahead.
Exodus chapter 3, verse 2. And the angel of the Most High appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Verse 3. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. Verse 4. And when the Most High saw that he turned aside to see, the Most High called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I.
Okay, so we know that this is Moses who climbed up to the holy mountain to see what the smoke and thundering was about, and he came across the burning bush. So we know that the mountain of the Most High was right there on the backside of the desert in Midian, the Mount Horeb. People, saying that the mountain is in Saudi Arabia. We're going to prove that it's not in Saudi Arabia. They got a burnt top or black top mountain in Saudi Arabia that they're claiming to be the mountain. It's blocked off and taped up and all this fenced off. You know, they got people believing that that is the holy mountain. But through these scriptures and through nothing else, we'll show you that that is not true. We're back in Jasher 79, verses 1 through 3. Again, or verses 2 through 3. We just read verse 1.
The book of Jasher, chapter 79, verse 2. And it came to pass one day that a kid of goats strayed from the flock, and Moses pursued it, and it came to the mountain of Ahayah to Horeb. Verse 3. And when he came to Horeb, the Most High Ahayah appeared there unto him in the bush, and he found the bush burning with fire, but the fire had no power over the bush to consume it.
Is that it? Okay, so I love the book of Jasher. It gives so much more detail to the scriptures. You know, it gives you so much more understanding. You know, how he chased one of the flock and it took him to the mountain. You know, love that book of Jasher. Everyone needs that book. So now we'll go to where is the wilderness of Zin or Sin that we just heard in scriptures. We're still getting clarity on this area so that there is no doubt that this area is not in Africa, it's not in America or Central America or South America. It is here within the borders of Jordan.
And it's most definitely not in Saudi Arabia.
Definitely not in Saudi Arabia. And we're still in the book of Jasher, Salakia. We're hitting the 84th chapter.
The book of Jasher, chapter 84, verse 3. And after this, the Most High Ahayah made the people go round by the way of Mount Seir for a long time. Verse 4. At that time the Most High said unto Moses, provoke not a war against the children of Esau, for I will not give to you of anything belonging to them as much as the sole of the foot could tread upon. For I have given Mount Seir for an inheritance to Esau.
Okay, so this is the children of Israel, Moses leading them out of Egypt and wanting to go through Edom, but was not allowed to go to war with Edom because the Most High gave that portion of land to Edom. We're in the book of Jasher, chapter 84, verses 3 through 7. And when we get done with that, we're going to skip down to verses 23 through 29. Go ahead, Ahch.
Jasher chapter 84, verse 5. Therefore did the children of Esau fight against the children of Seir in former times. And the Most High had delivered the children of Seir into the hands of the children of Esau and destroyed them from before them, and the children of Esau dwelt in their stead unto this day. Verse 6. Therefore the Most High said to the children of Israel, fight not against the children of Esau your brethren, for nothing in their land belongs to you. But you may buy food of them for money and eat it, and you may buy water of them for money and drink it.
Okay, so the same things that the Most High told us to do back then are the same things we are to do today when you are in the land. You come out here, it ain't about trying to bogart and buy land, take their land off of them, because it's not for us to do. We are to buy food if we need it and buy water of them if we need to. Go ahead, Ahch.
Verse 7. And the children of Israel did according to the word of the Most High Ahayah.
Okay, let's skip down to verses 23 through 29. Esau, Jacob's brother.
Verse 8, and the children of Israel went about the wilderness, going round by the way of Mount Sinai for a long time, and touched not the children of Esau, and they continued in that district for 19 years.
Okay, so 19 out of the 40 years of us wandering in the wilderness, so to speak, we were in that area by the way of Mount Sinai.
Verse 23, at that time all the children of Israel passed from the road of the wilderness of Moab and returned and surrounded the wilderness of Edom.
So the children of Israel passed from the road of the wilderness of Moab, an area now in modern day Jordan, and returned and surrounded the wilderness of Edom, also in modern day Jordan. This is the wilderness of the people that the Most High spoke about.
Verse 24, so the whole congregation came to the wilderness of Sin in the first month of the 40th year from their departure from Egypt, and the children of Israel dwelt there in Kadesh of the wilderness of Sin, and Miriam died there, and she was buried there.
Okay, so Miriam was buried in the wilderness of Sin, there in Kadesh, from after their departure from Egypt. So our ancestors' tombs are all through this area. Okay, let's go on to Numbers now. Numbers 20 and 1. We're going to get one verse out of Numbers, and then we're going into the book of Josephus. And we're going to hit book 4, chapter 4, in the book of Josephus, Antiquity of the Jews. We're in the book of Numbers right now, chapter 20, and we're going to hit one verse. We're going to precept that in Josephus, and then we're going to Joshua. And back, we're going to hit Numbers up a lot in coming up here, so keep your books locked on Numbers, because we're going to be all through the book of Numbers. Right now, we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 20, verse 1. Go ahead, Ahch.
Numbers, chapter 20, verse 1. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month, and the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there.
Okay, so once again, another precept to what we just read in Jasher, to get some solidarity on these scripts, because it's through thy precepts that we get understanding, and therefore we hate every false doctrine. Book of Josephus, book 4, chapter 4, and paragraph 6 and 7. Antiquity of the Jews. Antiquity of the Jews, book 4, chapter 4, paragraph 6 and 7. Okay, let's get a precept to what we just read in Jasher and Numbers, just so everyone is very clear and precise that we are not in Saudi Arabia, we are not in Southern Africa, and we are not in the Americas.
Right. We're going to show the exact location where Miriam was buried at. The exact location. The scriptures that we just read, she was buried in Kadesh.
And not only that, that's where we wandered for 19 years. Well, if you, I hate that word wander, because they actually knew where they were at. It wasn't like they was wandering, makes them think they blind, you know.
Yeah.
Moses knew where he was at because he had already been there when he fled Pharaoh. And we went into that story a couple of videos ago, in the Get Out videos, how Moses had to flee, just like we have to flee. We're in the book of Josephus, book 4, chapter 4, paragraph 6 and 7. Go ahead, Ahch.
The book of Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, book 4, chapter 4, paragraph 6, line 78. Then it was that Miriam, the sister of Moses, came to her end, having completed her 40th year, since she left Egypt on the first day of the lunar month, Exanthicus. They then made a public funeral for her at a great expense. She was buried upon a certain mountain, which they called Sin. Sin, or Sinai, or Sin, is short for Sinai. So when you spell Sinai, it's S-I-N-A-I. So she was buried upon the mountain of Sinai. And if that's the case, then the mountain is in Kadesh and it's not in Saudi Arabia. And we got more stuff to bring out on that.
Con, Ahch. Way to point that out.
Verse 7, paragraph 7, 82. Line 82. Now when this purification which their leader made upon the mourning for his sister, as it has been now described, was over, he caused the army to remove and to march through the wilderness and through Arabia. And when he came to a place which the Arabians esteemed their metropolis, which was formerly called Ars, but has now the name of Petra.
So we know that the land, that area landmass back then in biblical times was called Arabia, formerly called Ars, and is now named Petra. We went into last week how, Jordan didn't become a nation until 1941. And we'll touch on that a little bit more later on.
If you don't mind, I'd like to also add that the so-called Arabs, they wasn't going to Mecca or Saudi Arabia to worship. They was coming to Petra. Mecca wasn't even in existence during the time of Muhammad.
Good point.
It came like 300 years after when you do the research on it.
That area was the go-between between Egypt and getting across to the other nations in Syria and everywhere else. They went through Petra.
Now, some people have responded to my theory that Petra is the original holy city of Islam by protesting that the name Petra does not occur in the Quran. And they're right. But was the city of Petra always known as Petra? That name was given to the city by the Greeks and the Romans. What about before that? What name did the surrounding nations use when they referred to the city of Petra? Now, the oldest name for Petra and for the Petra Mountains is Seir. An Egyptian record tells us that Seir was in the land of Shasu, which is generally thought to be the mountains around Petra and Jordan. Also, in the temple of Amenhotep III, it talks about the war and against the people of a place called Mount Seir, which we know is Petra. From the Bible, we learn that Mount Seir was named this for Seir the Hortite, whose offspring had at one time inhabited the area. Later, the tribe of Esau, that is the Edomites, they battled against the Horites and the Zamzumites, and they destroyed them and made their home in these same mountains, the mountains of Seir. Much later, Mount Seir is also given as the location where the remnant of the Amalekites escaped to. Now, this is important because the Amalekites were later annihilated, and the references are that they were in Petra, and that's where they had escaped to. And Al-Tabari and others tell us, and they associate the Amalekites with the city of Mecca. But as long as we understand Mecca to be down in Saudi and central Saudi Arabia, then it's highly unlikely the Amalekites were that far. But we can actually place the Amalekites in Petra, and that we know, as we have seen in our studies, is the holy city of Islam. Now, in the autumn issue, 2007, of the Journal of Semitic Studies, there's an excellent article by Mehdi Shadel, who demonstrates that the original name of Petra was Rakim, and that's the name of a very early king who lived in that area. Shadel traces this, a funerary inscription in Petra, plus rabbinic writings, a letter attributed to Cyril of Jerusalem, some Syriac texts, a homily by Eusebius of Caesarea, the Book of Laws of Countries by Bar Desan, and writings by Josephus, and some biblical texts. All of this is proof that Rakim is the name of Petra. And in the Quran, we also find the name Rakim appears as God gives evidence that that Rakim is one of the great miracles. Look at Surah 18, verse 9. Do you reckon that the companions of the cave and El Rakim to be among our wondrous signs? Now, the location of the city of Rakim, or Petra as we know it today, is in a crevice between two mountains filled with majestic carvings that must have seemed to the listeners of the Quran to indeed have been a sign from God. However, many commentators on the Quran all down through history who didn't know anything about Petra and its association with Rakim, they thought maybe that's the name of a dog. The dog that was the seven sleepers had. These seven sleepers, they fell asleep for several hundred years, and when they woke up, it was called This is a Miracle, and also Rakim is called This is a Miracle. And so you can read about that in Shadel's article and find out what it says. Now, what about the Hebrew language? In Hebrew, Petra was called Sela, which means the rock. In the Hebrew language, the term Sela is applied to a number of large, prominent rocks, such as, and I'll give you some examples, there's the rock of Etam, Sela Etam in Judges 15 in the Bible. It's a specific rock that everyone knew. There's the rock of Rimmon, or Sela Rimon, in Judges chapter 20. And this was a place that people knew. They would call it the rock. There's the rock of Makaahla, you find that in 1 Samuel, and it's a place called the rock. But the Hebrew scriptures also mention a rock, Sela, in the south, but no other name is attached to it. Everyone seemed to know where it was. It was the rock. It was a place called Sela. Now, in the Greek language, the rock is Petra. That's the word we know it today. It's from the Greek. And it refers to a mass of connected rock, which is distinct from Petros, which is a detached rock or a boulder. So it means a big rock. Pliny the Elder, who's writing about 70 AD, he mentions the rock, and he calls it Petra, and it's the capital of the Nabateans and the center of their caravan trade. Now, there's an ancient Roman road map that dates back to the 3rd century, and it marks Petra as an important site on the Roman road known as the Via Nova Terraiana, which is named after one of the emperors. Later, under Constantine, the city of Petra became the seat of a bishopric. There was a church there, and in the 5th century, Petra was an administrative center for the Byzantine province of Palestine, Tertia. So it was a state that it was a capital of. And there's been some discussion as to maybe the name, the rock, Petra was also applied to a much earlier account of the Greeks in Antigonus, who attacks this large rock. But that is about 50 miles away near the Edomite capital of Busera. So it is not here. That is a separate rock. So that is the one that Antigonus attacked, also known as the rock. So we can be confused because there are two rocks. One Sila and the other one not. So the Roman maps talk about Petria. That's plural. The two rocks. And so Antigonus attacks one rock, you'll see it on the map, and Petra becomes the second rock. And so that's why we have a state called Petria, which is the two great rocks. Now the city of Petra also had another Roman name. The Roman Hadrian visited Petra in 130 AD on his grand tour of the Roman Empire, and he gave the city his name after him, Hadrian Petra. And so that's the name that Roman records used. Now, in 1993, archaeologists were excavating a Byzantine church in Petra when they discovered some burned up scrolls and they used various techniques and laid them out and discovered they could read them. These are burnt papyri. And they discovered that these were the records of Theodosa, the son of Obadias and his family who lived in Petra around 537 to 593. This would be during the time just before the prophet Muhammad was born, up until about he was in his 20s. And these records contain economic and legal documents about this family living in Petra, but a Christian family, not a pagan family. From the papyri, we discovered that Petra had the name Imperial Colony Antonia. Now, that's an interesting name. It was an imperial colony. It is interesting to note that honorific titles were used by these Byzantines. So they used things like the most honorable, you see it on your screen, the most religious, or the most brilliant, or the most pious, and so forth. They love to use these kinds of names. And in early Muslim writings, we find honorific titles are being used in Islam also. Very similar. Medina al-Munawwara. We have Karbala, the Muqaddasa, the Al-Quran al-Karim, and so forth. Sorry. And so just in the same way, they were using these kinds of things. Now, the emperor, Elabelius, he bestowed a name on it. He called Petra the mother of all colonies. This was an honorific title. We see it as early as the 3rd century, and it also occurs in the 6th century in the Petra papyri, the mother of all colonies. Now, eventually this term became associated with the English term we have today, metropolis. But if you understand, it originally meant the mother of all colonies. Now, a very similar term appears in the Quran, and it's used as a reference to Mecca. In Surah 692 and in 42:5, Mecca is called the mother of all settlements, or Qura. It's a common thing today for translators to carelessly say the mother of all cities, but the Quran specifically uses a term for settlements, Qura, not cities. That would have been Muddan. Notice that the Greek does not use the word cities either. And so the Greek and the Arabic agree here in their use of the term, and both of them call the holy city the mother of all settlements. The Petra papyri also revealed another term for the city of Petra, a unique term, not used in the Roman Empire, and it means blessed or noble. Getting an exact meaning of this word is difficult, as around this time, the meaning of this word was changing. Originally, it meant noble, even blessed, but at this time, the Christian world began to use the term meaning holy. And so the Petra papyri, they used this term and they apply it to churches and other big buildings, even tombs and civic buildings. They're called noble. Hence, the exact meaning of this word at this time remains uncertain. Neither holy, nor noble, nor blessed, it would apply to a city. It's a strange name, but that's the name that Petra had, a very unique name, and the people in Petra were very proud of their name, the holy and the blessed, or the noble city. This resonates with the terms that the early Muslims applied to the city of Mecca, such as Mecca al-Mukarramah or Becca al-Mubaraka, and so forth. Now, the city of Petra was a divided city. From the Petra papyri, some people have assumed that Petra was Christianized. It was a Christian city. After all, the papyri speaks only of Christians. Other Byzantine writings speak of churches and cathedrals, even the bishop who was there, and so forth. The bishop was sent off to the Council of Alexandria in 231 AD. However, it must be remembered the Petra papyri were found in a church, and they were legal records of only one family. They're not history. They don't have births and marriages and deaths, but they have buying and selling and legal arguments over the ownership of land and so forth. They're not historical records of what is happening on a wider scale, even in the city. So we need to turn to archaeology and try to discover what is the setting for these ancient papyri. And from a survey of buildings in Petra, it becomes obvious that the Christians occupied only a small sector of the city. All of the Christian churches, their Christian buildings, and the Christian tombs are located in one area of the city. The rest of the city appears to have maintained its polytheistic pagan identity. What is fascinating is that while the Christian sector of Petra was mostly in the northeast of the city, the polytheists occupied the center of the city, and most of the Islamic locations are located in the south of the city, except for the Kaaba building, which is on the main street, right beside some of the great pagan temples. Now, the polytheists, Muslims, and Christians would have all used the grand processional way that comes down Sikh and through the colonnaded street, and then they would go to their respective places of worship. Due to the religious nature of the city, the name Blessed Mother of Settlements or Colonies seems to apply perfectly in this situation. Petra was the blessed or holy city. It's not unusual for a city to be divided into various ethnic or religious quarters, where events in one quarter are barely noticed in the other quarter of the city. And so we find that it's not surprising to read in the Islamic records that there was antagonism between the polytheists and the Romans. Now, if the Romans and the Byzantines, if they had their own name for the city of Petra, then what name did the new fledgling Muslim community use for the name of the city? They wouldn't want to use a Jewish name. They wouldn't want to use the Roman name. So what is the name that they used? We read in Al-Tabri, Abraham directed Hagar and Ishmael to go to Al-Hijr, and he settled them down there. Now in Arabic, the name Al-Hijr has various meanings, but the one important one we want to notice is it means the rock. So here we have three names for Petra: the rock, Sila, Petra in Greek, and Hijr in Arabic, and they all mean the rock, the very same thing. However, since Petra was soon to be forgotten, the meaning of Al-Hijr or Hajr evolved into other definitions, and so there's some confusion today as people argue over the meaning of the name. The Quran has an entire surah dedicated to a place known as Al-Hijr. If you read this chapter, everything in it applies to the city of Petra. Noah and the ark was supposed to have circled Masjid al-Haram. Lot lived nearby, and so did all the other prophets. This chapter tells us that these prophets were messengers sent to warn the city of Hijr. But the people felt secure in their houses in the rocks, so they did not heed the messengers, and they were destroyed by earthquakes. Since Muslims did not know that Petra was the ancient city of Hijr, they have applied this chapter to a place in Saudi Arabia known as Hegra. Now, this place is mentioned by Strabo and Pliny the Elder, and in the Roman records, who calls it Hegra, and sometimes they call it just Egra. This whole area was occupied by various groups over the centuries, but the greatest impact was made by the Nabateans, who designated it as one of their burial locations, just like Petra was one of their burial locations. However, Petra was the capital, and Hegra was not the capital. It was a local burial place. Like Petra, the entire area is filled with Nabatean tombs and accompanying dining rooms, just like Petra. Now, after the Nabatean era, during the Islamic times, the city fell into ruins, was the burial place, and the Muslim pilgrims passing by wondered about this great cemetery. And so they identified it as Al-Hijr, which is mentioned in the Quran. And they also gave it the name Madat Salah, or the cities of Salah, because they did not know where he fit into history. Now, in my book, Quranic Geography, I identified the prophet Salah and later Hud as prophets to the Petra area, which suffered great earthquakes over its history. Surah 27:52 says, "Here are the homes, their homes in ruins on account of their iniquities. Surely this is a sign for people who know." So they looking, and there are the ruined homes. Now, when pilgrims passed by Hegra on their way to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, they wondered at these great tombs carved there, and so they associated them with this verse and with this ruined homes mentioned in Salah's story in Surah 27. However, in Hegra, there are no homes to be seen. It was just a burial city. The Hegra location, just a burial site. So this talk about, see their homes and how they're in ruin, doesn't really apply to Hegra in Saudi Arabia. And Hegra is not made out of a single projecting rock like Hijr suggests, but it's made out of scattered rocks in the desert, and the tombs are widespread. And so this challenges the concept of it being a city that was destroyed by an earthquake. And there's no evidence of an earthquake there or a great city. Now, there's another name that Petra was known by. In my search for the names of Petra, I have come across one writer who calls the city of Petra by name, and the name is Mecca. His name is Thomas. He is a contemporary of Al-Tabari. He's writing to us around his time of his death, and he's very clear about the Prophet Muhammad. After describing some of his activities, he is very clear in mentioning Mecca, and it's in Arabia of the two Petras. And he emphasizes that he's talking about the Mecca, the one where the Prophet Muhammad revealed himself. Listen, at that time, in a place called Arabia Paran, named Mecca, the Mecca, he showed himself to his brothers. And so he revealed himself there. In the area of the two Petras, not in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, but in Mecca in Jordan, in the area of Paran. So we will do a separate video on Paran later. That's what I plan to do. But notice that there are two rocks, the two Petras, and they are identified in this article, and Mecca is identified as being there. And so it is the city of Mecca. Now that helps us. Also, the city of Petra also has the name Mecca. That explains why Mecca is used in all of the Islamic records. And it's not a mistake. It's a real name. And here we have an outside source who tells us that Mecca is the city of Petra in southern Jordan. So when Islamic accounts speak of Mecca, they are referring to both Petra in Jordan and to Saudi Arabia. How can we tell the difference? Well, that depends on the year that is being referred to, and so we have to think carefully. Mecca, referred to before 65 AH, would most likely be Petra in Jordan. However, as time went on, Mecca referred to after 65 AH. 65 Al-Hijra is when it was moved, the Black Rock was moved down to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and so it could refer to that, or it could refer to Petra. But after 128 Hijri, that's when the great earthquake destroyed the city of Petra, and from then on, after 128, all references to Mecca are talking about Mecca in Saudi Arabia. So the Islamic records are not wrong when they mention Mecca, because there were two Meccas. The original one in Petra, the second one in Saudi Arabia. And so when the Islamic records talk about the mother of all settlements, Qura, they are not wrong, because there were two such cities, and they're talking about the city of Petra. The key to knowing what we're talking about is when the Kaaba was moved from Petra to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and the name Mecca was applied to both cities. Is Petra mentioned in the Quran? I think it is. Well, the actual word Petra isn't used in the Quran. The Quran uses terms like Becca, the mother of all cities, even Mecca, all refer to the city of Petra in Jordan.
Not Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a whole nother place on the map.
Yeah. Everything was called Arabia. Everything. But just because you see Saudi Arabia, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean nothing.
Right.
I got this last part of the face on there.
Okay.
At this.
Last part because it was the line was really quite a staticky, and it was unclear the last part that you said. You said everything was called Arabia, and then after that, it wasn't. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Back in the biblical times, this area was called Arabia. This whole area was called Arabia, and as the brother said, when you see this side Jordan or that side Jordan, it wasn't speaking about Jordan as in like the country. It was speaking about the Jordan River because Jordan didn't become a state or a kingdom until 1946. And on top of that, in the book of Josephus, it called Petra their metropolis, meaning a place of worship where they came to serve their idols. Mm-hmm. And Petra was a place that they had come to have worship at. So therefore, Mecca wasn't in existence at all. So if you find Ishmael and Hagar, if you know exactly where Abraham kicked them out at, you will know the location of the holy mountain.
Right.
And,
we're gonna hit them scripts coming up.
Yeah.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Nah, not at all.
But that's coming up at the end of this lesson. We're gonna hit those scripts. Mm-hmm. So, any more questions for this moment in time? Okay. Go ahead, what we got left on this?
Says, at this place, which was encompassed with high mountains, Aaron went up one of them in the sight of the whole army. Mm-hmm. Moses, having before told him that he was to die, mm-hmm. for this place was over against them. And that's it.
Okay. Way to bring that out. So, that's going to take us to the book of Joshua, and then we're going right back into Numbers, and we're going to hit chapter 10 for a verse, and we'll skip around in Numbers. We're in the book of Joshua, chapter 15. We're going to hit verses 1 and 2. And with the video, we're going to put up some maps so there's some more clear on the location and as far as the proximity to Egypt and proximity to these other nations we've been talking about. So everybody will get a very clear visual. Sometimes just hearing it, it doesn't really bring it home. Like if you can hear it and see the visuals. We'll also have probably a little news report clip on what we talked about earlier about the U.S. bombing the oil tankers of Iran. So we'll have a lot more graphics coming up in this video. We're in the book of Joshua, chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. Go ahead,
Joshua chapter 15, verse 1. This then was the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom, the wilderness of Zin. Southward was the uttermost part of the south coast.
Okay, this is the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah. Our forefathers, we come from the tribe of Judah, the so-called African Americans spread across this whole entire earth. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Verse 2, and their south border was from the shore of the salt sea, from the bay that looketh southward.
Okay, another name for the salt sea is the Dead Sea. We south border, the shore of the Dead Sea. Okay, so we're going to precept this up in Numbers chapter 10. We're going to hit verse 12, then we're going to Numbers 13. This lesson right here, along with the last two lessons, anybody that's uncertain about where they should go, where they should flee, if they should flee, you got all the ammunition you need to tell them exactly what they need to do. In the book of Numbers, chapter 10, verse 12. Go ahead,
Numbers chapter 10, verse 12. And the children of Israel took their journeys out of the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud rested in the wilderness of Paran.
Okay. Out of the wilderness of Sin, and the cloud that the Most High used to move the children of Israel, he moved it and it rested on the wilderness of Paran. That's how they knew where to go to next. We're in Numbers chapter 13, verse 26. What the Most High would do is he would move the cloud. You know, the cloud covered them to keep them from sweating to death and getting baked by the sun in the desert. And wherever it stopped, that's where they knew, that's where they were to rest for that period of time. So we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verse 26. Go ahead,
Numbers chapter 13, verse 26. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land.
Okay. So, Kadesh, the wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Sin. Same area, location, just a little, further away to the right, away from Egypt. We're still in the book of Numbers, and we're going to Numbers 27 and 14. From there, we're going to Numbers 33. We're in the book of Numbers, chapter 27, and we're going to hit the 14th verse. We have any questions up until this point? Anybody need any clarity on anything so far? Okay.
Numbers chapter 27, verse 14. For ye rebelled against my commandment in the desert of Zin,
which is sin,
in the strife of the congregation, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes. That is the water of Meribah in Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin.
Okay. And we already know, same place, Sin, or wilderness of Sinai. It's all the same place. Book of Numbers, chapter 33, verses 36 and 37. Go ahead,
Numbers, chapter 33, verse 36. And they removed from Eziongeber and pitched in the wilderness of Zin, which is Kadesh. Verse 37. And they removed from Kadesh and pitched in Mount Hor, in the edge of the land of Edom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So next, another precept is Numbers 34, verses 1 through 12. Just to show that there's no doubt that this area, where this area is at.
Numbers chapter 34, verse 1. And the Most High spoke unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land of Canaan, This is the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan, with the coasts thereof. Verse 3. Then your south quarter shall be from the wilderness of Zin, along by the coast of Edom, and your south border shall be the utmost coast of the salt sea eastward.
That's right. Go ahead, Ahch.
Verse 4. And your border shall turn from the south to the ascent of Akrabim, and pass on to Zin, and the going forth thereof shall be from the south to Kadesh Barnea, and shall go on to Hazar Adar.
Okay, so this is the Most High explaining where the promised land is located and what our borders were. So
Chapter and verse.
this is chapter 34 in Numbers, and we're hitting verses 1 through 1 through 12. So don't worry, brothers and sisters. We're gonna have some maps up for you, showing this and giving you a visual. Go ahead, Ahch.
Okay, Numbers 34, verse 4 again. And your border shall turn from the south to the ascent of Akrabim, and pass on to Zin, and the going forth thereof shall be from the south to Kadesh Barnea, and shall go on to Hazar Adar, and pass on to Asmon. Verse 5. And the border shall fetch a compass from Asmon unto the river of Egypt, and the goings out of it shall be at the sea.
Right. Go ahead.
Verse 6. And as for the western border, ye shall even have the great sea for a border. This shall be your west border.
Okay. He's mapping out the Holy Land, the Promised Land, Salakia, for us.
Verse 7. And this shall be your north border. From the great sea ye shall point out for you Mount Hor.
The Holy Mountain.
Verse 8. From Mount Hor ye shall point out your border unto the entrance of Hamath, and the goings forth of the border should be to Zedad.
That's right. Verse 9.
Verse 9. And the border shall go on to Ziphron, and the goings out of it shall be at Hazar Eden. This should be your north border. Verse 10. And ye shall point out your east border from Hazar Eden to Shepham.
That's right.
Verse 11. And the coast shall go down from Shepham to Riblah on the east side of Aden. And the border shall descend and shall reach unto the side of the sea of Kinnereth, eastward.
That's right.
Verse 12. And the border shall go down to Jordan, and the going out of it should be at the salt sea. This shall be your land with the coasts thereof round about. And as you can see, it does not go to Saudi Arabia. It stops at Edom. It stops at Edom. Point blank period. Yeah, it don't go down to Saudi Arabia at all.
That's right. So anybody who doesn't really know where Saudi Arabia, we keep talking about that, and where the location is in reference to these borders. We'll put these maps up, and you'll be able to see clearly exactly where our borders were. So we're out of the book of Numbers. We're in the book of Deuteronomy. And we're in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32, and then we'll slide over to chapter 33. We all know the book of Deuteronomy. That's where the Most High gave us the blessings and the curses. Which our ancestors broke the covenant, and we ended up with the curses, and the reason why we are in the situation that we are in currently. Okay, so we're in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 51. Whenever you're ready, y'all.
Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 51. Because ye trespass against me among the children of Israel at the water of Meribah, Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because ye sanctify me not in the midst of the children of Israel.
Okay, just getting more precepts on what we've read in other places. Let's skip over to chapter 33, verses 1 and 2.
Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 1. And this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of the Most High, blessed the children of Israel before his death. Verse 2. And he said, the Most High came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 of saints from his right hand, with a fiery law for them.
Okay, the fiery law, he came from Mount Sinai and the wilderness of Sin.
You know, I like to also add Mount Sinai, Mount Seir, Mount Paran is in Edom.
Absolutely, in the borders of Jordan, modern day Jordan, Arabia, ancient Arabia. So we're going to go to Habakkuk, hit one verse in Habakkuk, and then Judges, and we'll move on to the next subject. The book of Habakkuk, chapter 3 and verse 3. Anybody who don't know, that's in the back of the Old Testament. Right after Nahum, one of the last books in the Old Testament. Book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 3. Let's go on.
Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 3. The Most High Ahayah came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah, his glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise.
Mm-hmm.
Let me read that again.
Go ahead.
Verse 3, again. The Most High Ahayah came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah, his glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise.
Absolutely. Let's finish up this in Judges chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. That's before your, is it before or after Kings? After. It's when we didn't have any kings. We had judges.
After Joshua.
Okay. Salakia.
Your sister's sharp, bro.
Oh yeah, she's on point. She know what she's doing. That's with the story of Samson in the book of Judges. Because we had no kings. So we're in the book of Judges, chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. Let's hit it,
Judges, chapter 5, verse 4. The Most High, when thou wentest out of Seir, when thou marchest out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled, and the heavens dropped. The clouds also dropped water. Verse 5. The mountains melted from before the Most High Ahayah, even that Sinai, from before the Most High Ahayah of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Even Mount Sinai. Okay, so let's see what our next topic is. Where did Moses split the rock? When the children of Israel were murmuring and complaining, as they usually did in the wilderness, and that's where Moses met his demise as far as he made his mistake and was not allowed to go into Israel, set foot in the land. We're going to start with Exodus 17, 1 through 3. And we're going to really go all the way down to verse 9. You can only imagine Moses, human just like anybody else, man. All the thousands of people constantly murmuring and complaining in his ear. He couldn't take it, and he struck the rock and didn't give the Most High glory. And that's what sealed his fate as far as not getting into the land of Israel.
And the reason why we're going here, we're showing the exact location where Moses struck the rock. We have people out here that go to Exodus 17, verse 6, but they don't go to verse 7, because if they go to verse 7, then their whole doctrine is exposed. That's what we're doing today, exposing the doctrines.
That's right. We're exposing these deceptive doctrines. We've been doing it for the last few weeks. There are people wandering to and fro and, don't know where to go. They scatterbrained on this and confused, and we're trying to clear up the confusion. We're in the book of Exodus chapter 17, verse 1.
Exodus chapter 17, verse 1. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after they journeys according to the commandment of the Most High and pitched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Mm-hmm. Verse 2. That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You good? Mm-hmm. Verse 2. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, Why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Most High?
Mm-hmm. It's Moses, about at his limit right here, sick of the murmuring and complaining.
Verse 3. And the people thirst there for water. And the people murmured against Moses and said, Wherefore is this, that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst?
Okay, they was constantly saying that, even when they was up against the Red Sea. Why'd you bring us out of Egypt to kill us out here in the wilderness? We ain't got nowhere to go. We got the sea on one side, the Egyptians on the other. You know what I mean? Go ahead, whenever you ready.
Verse 4. And Moses cried unto the Most High, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me.
They constantly was ready to stone Moses, man. He was sick of them. Did we want to get that one precept in Numbers 21, 4 and 5 up?
Yeah, we can. We'll show the location.
Yeah, show this location. But Moses, man, he's ready to stone the congregation. I bet if he could, he probably would have. Many times as he begged the Most High to spare their lives and all of that, and they just kept wanting to kill him. Every challenge that came up in the wilderness, they was always looking to stone him, complain to him. We're in the book of Numbers 21, verses 4 and 5, just for a little precept of the first 3 verses we read.
Numbers chapter 21, verse 4. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. Verse 5. And the people spoke against the Most High and against Moses. Wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread.
Mm-hmm. Our soul loathed this light bread, that manna. They was getting sick of the manna. So we still in Exodus, y'all. We're going to pick it back up where we left off. But man, let this be a lesson to the children of Israel today. And anybody that makes it into the wilderness this time, we take this as a lesson keep your mouth closed. The Most High will provide. Like who's ever, one of the leaders that the Most High chooses, you know what I mean? All that murmuring and complaining ain't going to get you nothing but killed. The Most High will knock you out and take you out of the running to see Christ crack that sky. Go ahead, Ahch.
Verse 5. Exodus 17, verse 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the Most High said unto Moses, Go on before the people, and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod, wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand and go.
That's right.
Verse 6. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ahch.
Go ahead.
Now, this is the Most High giving instruction to Moses on how to get the water to the people. It's giving them direct orders on what to do so that they can drink some water.
And this is the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Verse 7. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Most High, saying, Is the Most High among us or not?
Okay, let's get a Strong's for Meribah. Again, we got to drill this into our people because, a lot of this will go in one ear and out the other, so we're going to give you the Strong's for Meribah once again.
And mind you, the verse says in verse 6, it says that he was at the rock of Horeb. That's the holy mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now he called the place Massah and Meribah. So now we're going to look up that. All right, Meribah, Hebrew number H4809. Meribah equals strife or contention, a fountain at Rephidim, in the desert of Sin, so called because the Israelites murmured against the Most High. The name of the water supply at Kadesh, on the southern border of the Promised Land. The people also murmured here against the Most High.
Right. So, once again, we see that the area of Sin and Meribah, where the waters of Meribah and the mountain of Horeb, they're all in the same location in Jordan.
And Moses is not Flash. He can't be in two different places at once. It's not Flash.
He's not the Most High. Right.
Verse 8.
Yeah, verse 8.
Verse 8. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Verse 9. And Moses said unto Joshua, Choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of the Most High in my hand.
Okay, we're coming up on the last 7-8 scripts here. We comfortable with that, or we want to hit Ezekiel?
Yeah, because it shows like the waters of strife.
Okay, let's go to Ezekiel chapter 47, and then we're going to hit chapter 48.
Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 19. In the south side southward, from Tamar, even to the waters of strife in Kadesh, the river to the great sea, and this is the south side southward.
Okay, so let's go to chapter 48, verse 28. And we're just getting different precepts for the same area so that there's no doubt different books saying the same thing about the same area. That's how we get understanding, is through these precepts. We're in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 48, verse 28.
Ezekiel chapter 48, verse 28. And by the border of Gad, at the south side southward, the border shall be even from Tamar unto the waters of strife, and Kadesh, and to the river towards the great sea.
Let's go to the book of Psalms 81, chapter 7. We're going to stay in Psalms. Book of Psalms, chapter 81. I'm going to hit verse 7, and we're going to chapter 91.
Psalm 81, verse 7. Thou callest in trouble, and I delivered thee. I answered thee in the secret place of thunder. I proved thee at the waters of Meribah. Selah.
Let's go to chapter 91, verses 1 and 2. It's different books saying the same thing.
Psalm 91, verse 1. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Verse 2. I will say of the Most High, He is my refuge and my fortress, my power, in Him will I trust.
The Most High is his fortress and his refuge, and we've been through those scriptures also. One more in Psalms 106, verses 32 and 33. Go ahead,
Psalm 106, verse 32. They angered him also at the waters of strife, so that it went ill with Moses for their sakes, because they provoked his spirit so that he spake unadvisedly with his lips.
He was hot, he was swole, and he spoke out unadvisedly with his lips. He's only human.
And all this happened in Kadesh. All the scriptures that we went through happened in Kadesh. And Kadesh in Hebrew is Quadash, which means holy.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Most High told Moses to bring Israel to the holy mountain. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3, verses 10 through 12. Go ahead, Ahch.
Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Verse 11. And Moses said unto the Most High, Ahayah, who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? Verse 12. And he says, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve the Most High Ahayah upon this mountain.
Okay, skip down to verse 18.
18. And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, the Most High Ahayah, power of the Hebrews, have met with us. And now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Most High our power.
Okay, let's go back to Numbers 20 and 16. So we know that this trek was 3 days' journey from Egypt into the wilderness. That's how long it took the children of Israel to get from Egypt to the mountain of SINAI, or Mount Horeb. The book of Numbers, chapter 20, verse 16. Go ahead, Ahch.
Numbers, chapter 20, verse 16. And we cried unto the Most High Ahayah. He heard our voice and sent an angel and have brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border.
Okay. That was Numbers chapter 20, verse 16. That's it, Ahch?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Judges 11 and 15 through 18. We're going to end this segment in Judah in the Apocrypha, chapter 4, verses 12 and 14. Book of Judges, chapter 11, verse 15 through 18.
Judges, chapter 11, verse 15. And said unto him, Thus saith Jephthah, Israel took not away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. Verse 16. But when Israel came up from Egypt and walked through the wilderness unto the Red Sea and came to Kadesh.
Is that it?
Verse 17. Then Israel sent messengers unto the king of Edom, saying, Let me, I pray thee, pass through thy land. But the king of Edom would not hearken thereto. And in like manner they sent unto the king of Moab, but he would not consent. And Israel abode in Kadesh. Verse 18. Then they went along through the wilderness and compassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and pitched on the other side of Arnon, but came not within the border of Moab, for Arnon was the border of Moab. That's it.
Okay. Let's go to Judith and your Apocryphas, chapter 4. We're going to hit verses 12 through 14. We'll hit where Ishmael and Hagar went, and I'll close it out with that. We're in the book of Judith, chapter 4, verses 12 through 14.
Salakia, that's Judith chapter 5, verses 12 through 14.
Okay. Go ahead,
Judith chapter 5, verse 12. Then they cried unto the Most High, and he smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues, so the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. Verse 13. And the Most High dried the Red Sea before them. Verse 14. And brought them to Mount Sinai and Kadesh Barnea, and cast forth all that dwelt in the wilderness. That's it.
Okay. We got 4 more scripts to go. We're going to see where Ishmael and Hagar went once they got kicked, when Abraham kicked them out because Ishmael and Hagar were getting too haughty in the presence of his wife. So his wife, Sarai, told him to tell them they had to leave. Let's go to the book of Galatians, chapter 4, verses 24 and 25. Book of Galatians, chapter 4, verses 24 and 25.
Galatians chapter 4, I'm going to start at 22. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise. Verse 24. Which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which genereth to bondage, which is Agar. For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children.
We got a Strong's for Sinai. What's that number? G4614.
You like to read it up?
Nah, you go ahead,
Sinai, Greek number, G4614. Sinai equals thorny, a mountain, or rather a mountainous region in the peninsula of Arabia Petrea.
Okay. Very good. We know that Jordan was not called Jordan at the time. It was called Arabia, or Arabia Petrea, or Petra. You got any more for that, Aunt?
No, that's it.
Okay, let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 14, verses 20 and 21. We got two scriptures. We're going to Jasher after this, and the antiquity of the Jews and the war of the Jews, and we'll be closing it out for today. Book of Genesis, chapter 14, verses 20 and 21. Okay, hold on, everyone. We may have to skip that chapter and verse in Genesis.
Genesis 21.
Okay, we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 21,
Verse 17 through 21.
verses 17 through 21.
Genesis chapter 21, verse 17. And the Most High Ahayah heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of the Most High called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for the Most High Ahayah have heard the voice of the lad where he is. Verse 18. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. Verse 19. And the Most High Ahayah opened his eyes, Salakia. And the Most High Ahayah opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled a bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. Verse 20. And the Most High Ahayah was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. Verse 21. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt.
Okay, so we got three more scripts to go. We're in the book of Jasher, chapter 21, verses 16 and 18. We're going to stay in Jasher.
No, we'll just do 16, 18.
Okay. After that, we're going to the antiquity of the Jews, book 4. Book of Jasher, chapter 21, verses 16 through 18.
Jasher, chapter 21, verse 16. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarah. And he rose up early in the morning, and he took 12 loaves and a bottle of water, which he gave to Hagar, and sent her away with her son. And Hagar went with her son to the wilderness, and they dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, with the inhabitants of the wilderness. And Ishmael was an archer, and he dwelt in the wilderness a long time. Verse 17. And he and his mother afterward went to the land of Egypt, and they dwelt there. And Hagar took a wife for her son from Egypt, and her name was Meribah.
Okay, so let's finish this out in the book of Josephus. We got two scripts, one in the antiquity of the Jews, one in the war of the Jews. First scripture in the war of the Jews, book 1, chapter 6, paragraph 2. Go ahead,
The War of the Jews, the book of Josephus, book 1, chapter 6, paragraph 2. It says, Now those of the people who were at variance with Aristobulus were afraid upon his unexpectedly obtaining the government, and especially this concerned Antipater, whom Aristobulus hated of old. He was by birth an Idumean, and one of the principal of that nation, on account of his ancestors, and riches, and other authority to him belonging. He also persuaded Hyrcanus to flee to Aretas, the king of Arabia, and to lay claim to the kingdom, as also he persuaded Aretas to receive Hyrcanus and to bring him back to his kingdom. He also cast great reproaches upon Aristobulus as to his morals, and gave great commendations to Hyrcanus, and exhorted Aretas to receive him, and told him how becoming a thing it would be for him who ruled so great a kingdom to afford his assistance to such as are injured, alleging that Hyrcanus was treated unjustly by being deprived of that dominion which belonged to him by the prerogative of his birth. And when he had predisposed them both to do what he would have them, he took Hyrcanus by night and ran away from the city, and continuing his flight with great swiftness, he escaped to the place called Petra, which is the royal seat of the king of Arabia.
Okay. So let's end it up with Antiquity of the Jews, still in Josephus, going to book 4, chapter 7, paragraph 1.
The book of Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, book 4, right?
Yes.
Book 4, chapter 7, paragraph 1. Now when Moses sent an army against the land of Midian, for the causes forementioned, in all 12,000, taken an equal number out of every tribe, and appointed Phinehas for their commander, of which Phinehas we made mention a little before, as he that had guarded the laws of the Hebrews, and had inflicted punishment on Zimri, when he had transgressed them. Now the Midianites perceived beforehand how the Hebrews were coming and would suddenly be upon them. So they assembled their army together and fortified the entrance into their country, and there awaited the enemy's coming. When they were come, and they had joined battle with them, and a mixed multitude of the Midianites fell, nor could they be numbered. There were so very many, and among them fell all the kings, 5 in number, viz., Evi, Zer, Reba, Hur, Rechem, who was of the same name, with a city, the chief, and capital of Arabia, which is still now so called by the whole Arabian nation, Erakim, from the name of the king that built it, but is by the Greeks called Petra.
Okay. So we can see that there was several books, passages in by our ancestors that show the exact area of the holy mountain. There should be no more discrepancy on the area. So don't let anybody come at you with any other place or any other doctrine stating that our land was somewhere else and the wilderness was somewhere else other than what you've read over and over again today and in the last few lessons we've had as far as where the holy mountain is, where our wilderness is, and where we are to come back to. I'd like to give all thanks, honor, and praise to our Father Ahayah for allowing us to bring this information out, because no one is bringing this information out. And it's a blessing that we are allowed and able to do that. I'd like to say thank you for everyone listening in who stayed with us. And we want to close out with a prayer. Does anyone have any questions as to anything we've just gone over? Okay. If not, is there anything you want to say, Ahch, before we put the prayer out there?
All praise and glory go to Ahayah, Yashaya, Wakadesh. Peace and blessings be upon you. Flee Babylon. I hope the scriptures and precepts that we brought upon you bear witness to your spirit. Shalom.
Okay. Shalom, everyone. Let's pray out. I hope everyone still has their heads covered, women, men uncovered. We're going to read the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew and in English. You want to lead us off,
Ahayah Bahashem Yashaya, Wakadesh Wawak, Abunawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kwadash Hayah Shem Ka, Ahayah Malak Wafka, Faba'a Rataza Wanka, Hayah Asha, Ba'a Rataza Kawa, Hayah Bashemayim Lathon, Lanawa Lakon Cow, Yawon, Wasalok Nawa, Kabawaf Nawa, Kosalok Nawa, Kabawaf Yanawa, Wala'a Thabaya'a Nawa, Bana Sayawon Abal, Hawasha Nawa Ma'un Rakaya Laka, Hamalakwa, Waha Allah, Waha Thapa Arath, La Awomiyam, Shalom, Aman.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen.